introduce you to and give you an overview of the Public Allies test market that's coming up in Milwaukee. So first of all, special thanks to Tammy for setting this up and inviting as many as she did with all three councils and the GAT leaders as well, because this is something that potentially could affect all of us and provide all of us with an opportunity to really learn from this test market that's going to be going on in Milwaukee. Also, special guests that we need to welcome this evening is Michael DiMaria. I never say it right, Michael, sorry. He's one of the GAT field managers. And Hailey Hawkins is a regional specialist for CA1 and CA7. They are helping us lead up and supporting this Public Allies test market program, both here in Milwaukee and also then in Wilmington, Delaware, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The goal for tonight is really to give you a high-level overview of this Public Allies test market that we're going to be running in Milwaukee, and also introduce an opportunity to utilize this Public Ally for a potential statewide service project if that's what next year's council chooses to do. Our agenda for tonight is really to give you a very quick overview of how we got here, then talk about what the Public Allies program is for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Talk then about what LCI's interest is and what their goals is and why we even are going down this path with a test market. Provide a brief overview of what we're planning with the district in 27A1. Introduce this potential statewide service project, that we're looking at, which is potentially, at this point, we're thinking maybe a plastic collection. Share a timeline with you for the entire Public Allies event, and then open it up for Q&A. As I said earlier, we are recording the session so that it can be shared out with those who were not able to attend tonight's session. And you can feel free to ask questions throughout the session. You may want to wait till we get to the end of a segment just to see if it's going to be covered in the comments. But at the end of each segment, we'll open it up for questions at that point, and then overall at the end, we'll open it up for questions as well. Speaking of questions, anyone have any right now on how we're going to be running or the session or what we're looking at doing? You all, by the way, can mute and unmute at will. If you're not talking, please stay muted so it doesn't get too loud and people can hear and we get a good clean recording of this. With that and no questions at hand, let's get started and talk about how we got here. This whole Public Allies concept started, Daniel Hawkins, who many of you are aware of, out of Delaware. Daniel is a product of the Public Allies program. He was trained on how they operate, which is that coalition model that many of you have heard about. And through that, when Daniel and I started working together at the beginning of the pandemic, we have been trying desperately to find a way to see how this Public Allies program might have a positive impact on Lionism, especially in urban markets where we struggle to find members. So Daniel and I, off and on for the last 2+ years, have been talking to execs and staff at LCI to see if there was any interest in going down this path. Well, in July, the interest peaked and we started working with staff and talking about the possibilities, and fast forward to now, and we are in the midst of preparing to do this test market in Milwaukee and Wilmington, Delaware for this Public Allies program. It's been a whirlwind. It's been a lot of work for the 27A1 exec team and their GAT team, but it's such an incredible opportunity. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means as we move along. But we felt it was really important to start out with, once you had a basic understanding of how we got here, to talk about what Public Allies is. And Hailey is here this evening to give us that overview of what Public Allies actually is and how it works. So Hailey, welcome.
Thank you, Jody, and thank you everyone for being here and for having myself and Michael on the call to join. We're excited about this project and initiative that we're working on. So a little bit about Public Allies is they are a national movement committed to advancing social justice and equity by engaging and activating leadership of all people. And so what they do, and they've started this back in 1992, is they have helped thousands of underrepresented emerging leaders serve our country by getting on successful pathways to higher education and careers and bring communities together to work for the common good. So they do this across 20 different regional offices across the United States, and their headquarters and main office is in Milwaukee in Wisconsin. So we are close to their headquarters, which is helpful too. I believe Jodi is putting in the website link for Public Allies right now as well. So you can check out their website to get a little bit more information on what they do either after this meeting or while we're chatting. And so how they do this with their allies is they work with AmeriCorps. So it's an AmeriCorps program, and they work in communities nationwide that focus on practical on-the-job learning through a 10-month paid full-time nonprofit apprenticeship. So these allies apply to join Public Allies, and then they are partnered with a host organization that wants to host one of these allies with this sort of apprenticeship for 10 months and work together with that organization. And they go through rigorous leadership training. So while they do work with these host organizations, every Friday they get together with their cohort and they work on leadership skills and leadership training with the Public Allies at their office in their region. They build community through their cohort model. So with their cohort and their other fellow Public Allies, they network together and learn and go through this 10 months together at different host organizations. And they do a lot of this through mentoring, coaching, and continual self-reflection. Next, Jodi. And so again, how they do this, so allies are placed with a nonprofit organization where they help address critical community needs, such as they can work on youth development, education, workforce development, environmental issues, arts programming, and community health. And the ways that they can help their organizations that they are matched and partnered with, they can develop new systems, conduct community assets and needs assessments, they can develop partnerships and improve programming and capacity, and they help increase growth, engagement, achieve organizational goals, et cetera. It depends on where they're partnered and what that host organization has envisioned for them. There's a few things that they can't do. For example, they can't participate in lobbying activities, they can't work on election campaigns, and they can't replace an existing staff person. So our plan is that they would work with your district and partner together to help you guys in your area. And Michael will now share a little bit more about how we envision this at LCI and what our organizational goals are.
Thank you very much, Hailey and Jodi, for setting this up. So when Daniel and Jodi came to us to discuss this, I mean, we started from LCI to look at an organizational goal. If we were going to start with a test market or two test markets, what would be our organizational goal? And we looked at where Public Allies has their offices, and the allies tend to work in that area within a distance of the offices. Maybe some of the suburban office, they can get out to the suburbs, but they pretty much stay in the urban area. So, and they're in 20 cities across the country. So that's kind of like we're looking at it. Let's do a test and see how it goes. But what would be our organizational goal? And it just so happens that one of our challenges is to grow new clubs in urban markets. And that's something we've seen across the country, not in any one state. So this was a good conversation starter. So we kind of came up with these 3 bullets here. First off and foremost, the highlight is to grow new clubs in urban markets, to reach new markets in areas where we're struggling. To regain and retain and grow membership in existing urban clubs. So in the case of Milwaukee, we have the Milwaukee Greater Club is the only club in the area. So we would look to, to help them with retention, but also to grow membership. And overall to increase brand awareness internationally and locally in urban markets. And when I say internationally and locally, it's always, when we're working in new markets, we raise the brand awareness of our local awareness, but also that we're a part of an international family of service clubs, of service volunteers that are making incredible impact. And when we talk to, urban, especially, community organizers and in urban areas, they are shocked when they hear about how much Lions do not only in the community and in the surrounding areas, but across the world. So these are kind of those 3 organizational goals that we looked at to say, hey, in this test market, let's see if we can make some inroads in these 3 areas. And then we also wanted to kind of map out some site-specific objectives. So this is where the district and the you know, the Lions of not only Milwaukee, but Wisconsin can look at this and say, what are our objectives that will help hit that organizational goal? But what do we want to accomplish if we had a, you know, essentially a staff member to work with us and to learn from us, but also to bring their expertise with them of what they're learning throughout this you know, this Public Allies professional development and leadership development program. So the site-specific objectives are define the objectives and plan to achieve the organizational goal. And this would be led by, you know, the Lion champion, which for Wisconsin would be Lion Jodi, and for Delaware would be Lion Daniel. So these site objectives may have some similarities, but they're really tailored to, you know, the needs and the goals of that district, and build capacity for Lions to do the above. So it's like, it's, you know, working with the ally to help create new systems, maybe some manuals on some new approaches, which could be that capacity building and partnership building, but also mapping of assets that already exist in the community. These are all things that we do as Lions, but we could maybe improve on, especially in urban areas. So with that, this may be a good time to pause for a couple questions, but also wanted to point out that, so you have these allies are applying to be part of this leadership development program. In this case would be with Public Allies Milwaukee. And then what we're doing on our end, actually we can go to the next slide. I'm sorry, Jodi, we have one more slide that I also wanted to talk about, our commitment from LCI. But we also have organizations that are applying to Public Allies to host an ally. So that's what we're doing, looking to do on behalf of the district. The district would be the ones that it's applying, but LCI is committing to supporting this in these test markets. So for a Public Ally, there's a fee, and that fee goes towards their stipend. And so it's, you know, the partner organizations will pay a larger majority of the fee of that stipend for them, and then Public Allies contributes a smaller amount. But in this case, it'll be a $16,000 fee that goes towards their stipend for that 10 months of engagement with in this case, the district, because that'll be that nonprofit organization. And we also offer reimbursement for the Lions that are helping out in this. And when I mean reimbursement is like, if Jodi's going to meetings or Daniel's going to meetings, you know, LCI is committed to make sure that their mileage gas is covered, and so that it's not coming out of their own pocket. But there's also that staff support. So Hailey, myself, and we have another staff member, Guy Schmally, who's Hailey's partner in CA1, and he's working with Daniel closely in Delaware, but we're all working together on this project. And there's also, when an ally comes on board to work with the district, staff will also help them to onboard them everything Lions. So we can walk them through, you know, that Lions 101 that we do for staff ourselves. When we get new staff members, it's like, this is how our organization's set up. Here's how we're broken out into districts. We're board driven. Here's a breakout of the board, so that they will get that onboarding. And so we're building that out too. Like, what would an onboarding of an ally be that staff would be handling that? So you have our full support into the stipend fee. There might be some local fees that I think Jodi will talk about that can be discussed within the district. But the stipend will be coming from LCI, and also our full staff support as well. And with that, now I'll pause. I jumped the gun on the pause.
Not a problem at all. Phil, I see your question in the chat window, and we'll get to the, I don't know if you see that, Michael, but Phil is asking, after the test period, the test market, who will pay the $16, or is this a one-time fee?
So that's a great question. And so just so you know, it's a 10-month program that they're applying for. So it's a 10-month placement with the organization, so with the district. So that is what that $16,000 stipend covers. Covers their stipend for the entire 10 months that they're with. If they're a first-year ally, if this is their first year, they can apply to do it again next year and be a second-year ally. So there's an opportunity to reapply, and if they have a good experience with that organization, they could stay on for another 10 months. And at that point, it would be, then we would have to, you know, again, this is a test pilot for this, or we don't call it a pilot, a test market for LCI. So we're going to do it for this first year and see if it's something we want to further invest in and grow capacity and look at some other markets, maybe, you know, support for a second term for an ally as well. But for this 10 months, LCI is going to support that 16,000.
So real quick, I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but is that going to be per urban area? You know, like if we have Appleton, Madison, Milwaukee.
So
It's
Phil,
just, go ahead, Jody, I'm sorry.
there's only, in Wisconsin, there is only one Public Allies office, and that's in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And that means the only market we can officially take a Public Ally from is there. And part of the beauty of this, and as we've been talking about this with staff and working through the background of all of that's gone into this planning, is that looking for ways to leverage what we learned in Milwaukee and roll it out across all the urban markets in Wisconsin, and not just the urban markets. Obviously, it's a focus on the urban markets, but there's going to be learning opportunities and takeaways that will work in any of our markets, is what we hope anyways, based on what our planning is at this point. So does that answer the question, Phil? Because this is a one-year commitment from LCI at this point.
No, thanks, Jody.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. Their placement will be in the Milwaukee area. They'll be working with the district more on an everyday basis, working with Jody specifically on an everyday basis. But that doesn't mean that they can't work on like the statewide service project. They can't work with the multiple district, you know, and liaise and work on a larger project. Just the reporting structure and where they'll be working on an everyday basis is in the Milwaukee greater area.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Jody, this is BJ. A question. So we're working with the greater Milwaukee area for that club that's there now to build that club, or are we working with that club and then also trying to start another club? Are we doing both,
BJ,
or
that's
one?
a brilliant question, and it leads into the next slide. So if you can hold 1 minute, we will answer that question in a lot more detail.
Okay.
And then if we don't catch it all, you can jump in and ask some more, because that's a fantastic question, because it's part of what the conversation was. And I think another key point just to be aware of, and part of the reason this Public Allies program is so brilliant, if you've ever spoken to Daniel Marnie-Elkins, who's an amazing recruiter and an amazing builder of clubs, he tells everyone that he talks to, he is not unique. He is a product of the training from Public Allies. This Public Allies Coalition model that we're talking about, bringing in 12 different portions of the community working together, Public Allies believes and has proven time and time again in the last 25 years that this is a proven model, that those 12 organizations, those 12 groups can solve any problem in their community that comes to them, because they come from all walks of life and every area of the community. If we can figure that out, it doesn't matter if you're Milwaukee, it doesn't matter if you're in Stevens Point, it doesn't matter if you're in Cuba City, Wisconsin. It works wherever you go. It's this concept. And that's part of the exciting part of this, because if we get a lead behind, I'm going to call it manual for lack of a better term at this point, we can create trainings off of that and start training our trainers to train the clubs on how this process works. So this is part of the beauty of how we're going to be able to leverage this across the whole multiple district. And where this goes in future years, if we get another ally here next year, or if it goes on to another market in another community and another multiple district, that's all up in the air right now. But we know we're going to walk out of this as a multiple district knowing a heck of a lot more about how to build these coalitions that have been so successful with so many other organizations since Public Allies started. So it's part of the excitement of this program when we started looking into this and looking further and further, and then speaking to staff. And anyways, I could go on for hours, but I'll stop because we do have a time schedule this evening. Any other questions before we go in and talk about the tentative goals we've got worked with between LCI and also 27A1 execs and leadership team to set up?
The only thing I would just leave everybody with is that the district is going to set the deliverables. So we want to make sure that it's in that 10-month, that it's, because the ally needs is looking for a specific training and a specific experience as well. So we want to make sure that they have deliverables, that they're set up for success to be able to help us to leave our organization better when that 10 months is up. So if it is a manual on asset mapping, coalition building, that's a new tool, not only for this district, but also Lions, across the country and around the world. So we're looking at it as what do we want them to create for this district? What does the district want after those 10 months? So it's really up to everybody on, within the district and multiple district to look at that.
And I will add to that before I share this next slide about what the team has come up with so far, that we are in the middle of the goal setting process with District Governor-elect Tal, because he is DGE now, Ray, Dave, District Governor Dave, and the rest of the GAT team in A1. So part of this is still conjecture. We don't know what those deliverables will be until we finalize what's going to happen. But I am going to share with you some of those tentative goals that BJ was just asking about so that you can see what we're looking at. So BJ, the first thing is to look at the Milwaukee Greater Club. And it is a club that has been struggling the last couple of years and with COVID and things, and working with them to help them increase their service footprint. And what that means is going to be defined by the club. And they will go through an entire SWOT analysis and the full process of the planning process if they sign on to this. We meet with them again on February 15th at their next meeting and finalize where they're going to go with this process. The other pieces that we're looking at this point is to start a service-focused, most likely virtual specialty club that will allow us to bring people in that may not have ever looked at becoming a Lion. This could be something about that focuses on drug prevention. It could be vision screening. Again, all of this is up in the air until more research is done. And the thought on that is the public ally will work on what's called community mapping to find out what the needs are, figure out what the interest is in those needs, and help direct us through that research on making recommendations on what that specialty club might look like. And then time allowing, we would really like to start another full-blown traditional club in a local library or community center or some other community organization that's already in place that will allow us to leverage this coalition model, similar to what we've seen in some of the clubs in Delaware. So those are the three tentative goals, all flowing back into those organizational goals that LCI has. The commitment from 27A1 at this point is that they've already done this, their SWOT analysis. They are further ahead on goals than any other district governor-elect probably in the world right now, because they've actually laid out their goals very clearly and they should be wrapping those up in the next, I would guess, by the end of February. We do need to provide an actual physical office space and the technology that goes along with it, meaning a laptop and a phone of some sort. And then there's potential that there will be additional budget required from the district of 27A1, depending on what those goals end up being. This would be defined by the goals. The district would then go through their normal budgeting process, and any budget that would be required from the district would be approved by in their traditional budgeting process. So that's kind of an overview of what's going on with the Milwaukee test market. BJ, does that answer the questions?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool. Does anyone else have questions on what's going on with that? And maybe now, Ray, actually would be a good time for you if you just want to jump in and make a couple of comments.
Well, we, like you said, we have done the SWOT analysis. We don't have all the goals set, obviously, because we're still waiting on some of the answers from Greater Milwaukee. And as soon as we get those, then we'll probably set up another meeting to finish those goals. We're hoping to have those done before the end of February. And then we'll start on the next phase.
Excellent. Thank you, Ray. The district team and leadership team in A1 has been amazing with this, by the way. They have been on board with it since day one and excited. The SWOT analysis was a really fun 4 hours we spent together And a lot of times people don't think SWOT analysis are fun, but it was cool to see how they came together and how they brought it all together. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how we might leverage this public ally for the multiple district. As we were talking about this with staff and Daniel and I, as we're looking at what else could we do to help get more information out and get more spread of the allies services, so to speak, to the rest of the state and the rest of the multiple. And one of the things that came to mind, because one of our challenges is getting clubs to market and also getting clubs higher visibility in many of the communities, was to create another statewide service challenge, similar to what we did during the centennial with both the vision screening challenge and the eyeglass collection challenge. By the way, this is a proposal. This is not set in stone. This is for the incoming council to figure out where they want us to go with this. But the goal of this would really be to engage clubs across the state in a very visible statewide service project. And we would be able to use it by measuring the results through the new, we currently call it My Lion, but whatever the new Salesforce is, so that it would encourage clubs to get on and report their service for this project, and then hopefully for everything else, so that we would be able to monitor and be able to figure out where we are from a district standpoint and all of those things. And where this comes in and why this is important at this point is that the public ally would be able to create and implement marketing plans and train Lions on different types of marketing that we may be familiar with. In general, public allies are young adults about immediate post-college age. So let's call them 20-somethings for lack of a better term at this point. They know a different style of marketing than most anyone else in our multiple understands or knows. And this is a great learning opportunity for us to have utilized their skills to implement a service project, but also, even probably more importantly, help train our Lions on some areas of marketing they may or may not be familiar with. The thought is that we would model it, as I mentioned, off of the Centennial Service Challenges we did a few years ago. This says GMTs, and I apologize, that's a typo. The thought is that the state GSTs and the district GSTs, the global service team coordinators, would really be the ones to drive this. They would work closely with the ally and as we work through it, get the marketing materials distributed, encourage clubs to participate and everything else. If this is something that the incoming council wants to do, because of the timing of putting the goals together for the Public Allies program to be able to recruit the ally and then get them appointed, we would need to know from the incoming council, the 23-24 council, to get some unofficial approval to move forward with the challenge planning. And then there's also part of that planning to look at an LCIF PR grant and how that might work in to help promote a statewide service challenge. If this is something that the incoming council decides to move forward with, then they would, if they give us permission to move forward on that, they would then have to go back and do the due diligence and do final approval after they become official council, district governors and council of governors at the July council meeting. And it would not need to be done before that, because the timing of where we need it as far as Public Allies is concerned would already have been met. So that is a basic quick overview of the thoughts behind a possible statewide project. I see that. Is that Patty's hand up? Yes. Hi,
Yeah, it's
Patty.
me.
Yeah.
So I just want you to be aware that this coming up Sunday, we have a Zoom call with all the firsts. So I will bring, between Tal and I, we can explain what's going on here so that they can, start, make sure that we can get you guys that unofficial approval by March 1st.
Awesome, Patty, thank you. I will be down in St. Charles already, but if need be, I can answer any questions you have in St. Charles. We can do a quick chat down there as well.
Awesome. Okay.
And Michael and Hailey will be in St. Charles off and on throughout your time down there as well. So we should be able to help you get whatever questions come up taken care of. That I think is basically all I was going to, any other questions on what this potential project, statewide project is? Don, I know you're on, and is that Don? I just lost Don's last name.
Meter,
Yeah, Don Meter.
Okay,
Don Meter first.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah, sorry.
no, you're good. I just didn't know if it was Don Drew as a
Yeah,
state
I
GST, a current one. I thought I'd ask him if he had any questions. So good to see you, Don.
Yeah,
Hear
good to
you.
hear. Yeah, sounds exciting. So the project would be, I guess, collection of plastic. Is that what you're
That's-
initially thinking of? Okay.
That's the proposed project. And there's a lot of thought behind that, but it would really be up to the council, incoming council, to help refine and define what they feel the proper project would be. Because this again is a statewide project and it's an opportunity to leverage, like we had mentioned, this allies services on a statewide level.
Okay, sounds good. I think we can work with that.
Excellent. Bert,
So as I understand it, this is something that the incoming Council of Governors will be dealing with. Is there a line item that would be for the upcoming budget to implement this program? And if so, we would have to go and, as the current Council of Governors, put that in our budget for next fiscal year.
Bert, I think the only thing that would possibly, yes, first of all, the answer to the question, unless it's changed since I was playing in those systems, is it would fall under whatever the same budget line that we used for PR when we applied for PR grants in the past.
Okay.
There should be no other out-of-pocket cost for the
Okay.
multiple district. It would only be at that point. Unless the committee comes back, and meaning the GST teams come back and say they need X number of dollars for promotion above if we don't go for a grant. I'm not sure how that's also undecided yet, but it would fit under the PR grant line or budget line.
Perfect, thank you.
Brian,
Yeah, one thing to consider with the plastic project is in the rural parts of the states, they don't have access to the distribution channels to get the plastic back to Trex manufacturing. You know, they have to drive like over an hour to find the place that would take it. So
Brian, I'm guessing that's a really great point that we should bring up with the GSTs if this goes forward for planning. And that's similar to when we did, especially the eyeglass collection. There was systems set up in different districts to be able to collect items depending on where it was. For some of the more rural clubs, between our WLF reps and others, and I think we could probably figure something along those same lines if they planned for it with this state GST and the district GSTs. Great point.
If I might, when we did the plastic collection for our club, we found out that most of the pick and save units will allow us to collect it there and have the Trex people pick it up at the pick and saves. So that's what we did.
If this goes forward, needs to be a fair amount of research, actually a lot of research done and planning for it, that then we'll go through and take into consideration those points. I did write down, Brian, thank you, because the rural collection is something that needs to be taken into account for sure. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things we need to take into account, like the volume of plastic and how much space it takes up and all those other things.
And Jodi, I would like to mention D1 has done an extensive amount, and we have found a lot of challenges within this district of where we can do the plastics. B1 does a tremendous amount. They would be somebody else, a really good resource to know if they're having difficulties with that. But I mean, I know my own club 7 miles from Madison, and I have no place to take plastic.
One of the things that we're hoping the Ally can take a look at, quite honestly, is two other things, and they're sitting on my desk somewhere, but I can't see them right now, is not only collecting that kind of plastic, but there is the opportunity potentially to find someone that will take the pill bottles, for recycling, and also medication blister packs. It's being done in other areas. And one of the things that I'm personally hoping is that the Ally can take a look at that as well as a way to, again, expand our service. We have a lot of clubs that are already collecting plastic, so it makes sense that this would fit and be something relatively easy to roll out. But there's other additional items we may be able to look at and ask the Ally to take a look at as well. Any other questions on this before I show you all a timeline? And then we'll have Q&A again. Go ahead, Michael.
I just wanted to make one comment as you're talking about budgets and especially future budgets for next Lion year. Always keep in mind the GAT success story funding. So this might be something to bring up at the council meeting because districts can apply for us, tell us a success story through our website. We send you $500. Use it any way you want. But what you can do is at the council meeting say, hey, we have this opportunity. We have this, to get this funding, and there's 10 districts. That's $5,000. If everybody decides to apply for it and put it towards that the statewide service project, that might be a good way to inject $5,000 to the budget, and that comes from us. That's LCI funding. We would just send it, and I think we could even say if the council says writes us and says all of the governors have signed off, this is for next year. Like if you have districts out there that haven't applied for it for this year, please do. But for next year, you can just send us an email saying all the governors have signed off. Here's that sign off. Please just send that right to the multiple district. We could do that too. There's options with that, but don't leave that money on the table and bring it up to say, if you're looking for that extra budget, you need that extra kick in the budget. We can help with that.
That's an awesome point, Michael. Thank you for that reminder. And yes, if you haven't already applied for that this year, get on it. It's free money. You just have to write up a great story, which you all have, as we're well aware. And Hailey, thank you for dropping that in the chat. Phil.
Actually, it's Patty. So I'm just making sure I understand this. So when we apply for that grant this year, because we'd have to ask our district, obviously, if they mind this, then that's the $500 he's talking about putting in a big pot, correct?
No.
Next year.
If your
The
district,
next year's $500.
Yeah. I would just say if you're planning for it during the because the ally implementation, when they're working, will be next Lion year. It almost lines up really perfectly. Like in July, they're starting, I believe. But so you can start the conversation now with the first vice district governors, because I think we'll open it up. I think it's usually in September when the funding starts. So if you start the conversation now to say, hey, each district, let's talk about it. When the time comes, when we kick off the new year, you write us and say all of the districts have said that they want to earmark, you still got to apply, send in your success story. Then we could send it directly to the multiple. And if there's a district that doesn't want to participate in it, that's fine. We'll send it to them separately, the $500, and they can, because it's really whatever the district sees fit with this. But it's a good conversation that you could start. But please, if there's any districts that have not, and Hailey can kind of do an update and see if there's any districts that have not applied for it this year, please get them to do it. It takes 10 minutes. Send us a story. We'll send you $500 for this year that you can use in any way that you see fit.
Thanks, Michael. All right, let's move on to timeline, because I think that'll answer the last big questions that are remaining. I think we can probably mop up with this. So we're in the middle of the planning phase to be able to put our application in for the public ally. And that involves us defining whatever that role for the public ally is going to be. And that, again, is being driven by working with the A1 leadership team. And then if the council for next year sets us forward, we'll also include working with the state GAP people and district GAP people. And that's also going to include measurables. And I think that's one of the key points we haven't really talked about yet. Public Allies has an extensive program in place from an admin side and a tracking side that allows us to really be able to make sure that the public ally that we end up with is doing what we need them to do and keeping on track and all of those things. So that's going to be a fascinating learning curve for us as Lions as well. So we're working on the SWOT with analysis with 27A1. We've wrapped that up. They're onto the goal phase. We'll be working with Milwaukee Greater, hopefully in March after they sign off, fingers crossed, in middle of February here. And then we'll be working through that again with the new clubs as we go on. And then, of course, as I mentioned, if the service project ends up being a statewide service project, ends up being a go, we'll be working on that to try to get as much of the detail in place by the end of April as possible, so that we can add that and roll that into the goals for the public ally and make sure that it fits the mold. By March 1st, as we already mentioned, we're asking for the unofficial approval from next year's council to move forward or not to move forward, as the case may be. Our application for the partner application is due by May 15th. And then at that point, Public Allies reviews it, makes sure that our goals and everything that we've laid out meets their criteria. If not, we work with them hand in hand. And by June 30th, it is a final application and it's in and it's ready to go. In July, there's a number of events that occur later in July, but for our point, and it's mostly internal and how they get the allies in place and the matching of them. But in August is when the actual ally match and the partner match happens. So in August, we'll be going through the interview process and we'll then be matched with an ally. The ally actually starts the first week in September. They start with a couple of weeks of training directly with Public Allies Wisconsin, and then they hit the ground running with us on September 18th, which is I think this third week in September. We have them until June 30th. And at that point, they are we'll know where we're at with a lot of things by that point and where we're headed forward with other pieces of this program. So this is really a program that goes through June 30th. And as Michael mentioned, it almost syncs entirely with our Lions Year, which is a nice fit for us as an organization. So Phil, I see your hand is up. Is there any questions on our timeline?
We don't have any questions. He accidentally.
It's okay. I'll fix that. Oh, you got it.
Well, I do have a question. So who is actually doing the interviewing? Is it LCI? Is it you as the champion? Is it the A1 leadership?
It's a combination of all of the above.
And we've already started conversations with Public Allies Milwaukee so as we start to build, as the district builds out their role for the ally and the position description, they can start thinking about who we're looking for. So they'll actually help us kind of advise on matching as they get applications. So the sooner we get the application to them, that's why we kind of want to get the application in before, the deadline is not till June, but if we get it in early, we can start conversations with Public Allies as the potential allies are applying. So, and then, like you said, it'll be a combination. Obviously, the Lions are driving this, so we want to be, Jodi and the district Lions to be kind of helping us with that. But staff, Hailey, myself, will also be included in that, and not only with the matching, but with the onboarding once they arrive with us.
Okay.
And just a secondary part of how this match works, which is actually fascinating, is that we put our application in and the allies review our application. They rate in advance. We rate the allies applications we get for the top 3 that we're looking at. The allies rate the top 3 or partners that they're interested in. And then that's how they start to fit the allies and the partners together. And it's a back and forth between Public Allies and then obviously the partners and the allies themselves. So it's a pretty cool process. And again, they've been down this path as they're interviewing the allies as they're coming in. They find out where their interests are and they start to steer them towards companies if they understand, or their partners that they understand what the goals are.
Jodi, just an observation that when we use Public Ally and Public Allies, Public Ally, as I'm interpreting it, as an individual, but I think we're using Public Allies both in a plural state and an organizational state. I think it's easy for people to get cross-wired on the terminology.
I think that's a really great observation. And so I think we've been calling them PAs, which gets more confusing if you see from other areas, but we call Public Allies the organization with the IES, and then the Public Ally is the apprentice. So I think that's a really great point, Lee, and we should change the way we're sharing that information and how we're using those.
Or just clarify when you bring it up, because also just recently, Public Allies was based upon, as I understand, a number of candidates that were going to apply to be an ally, right? So.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like the Milwaukee Allies, that's kind
correct.
of like the collective. So this is it's a great feedback for a resource that we create for the Lions would be like a quick reference,
yes.
Terminology reference. That would be, that's a great thing. That's a great point. So that'll help us, in this partnership, you're going to hear these terms. This is what they mean and how they relate to us. And we'll do the same with them. We'll be like, when they hear lions, they'll be like, what are lions? You know, so it's kind of the same thing that we'll create. So this is where staff comes in when we get feedback like this. Hailey, myself, and Guy, with working with Jodi and Daniel, will start creating the resources that we need to onboard the allies, but also help the Lions with that, you know, again, like that outward facing terminology. So thank you for that. That's great.
Yeah. So the other question that I guess that I had was, I've heard of, from what I've heard and understand so far, and Jodi did fill me in on some of this earlier, there almost seems like there's two phases to this. There's a district phase and a potential multiple district phase. Are those two codependent? Can they happen independently?
You are correctly, there are two phases. The phase that's for sure going forward is the Milwaukee area project, however it's defined. The phase that is unknown is what we will or will not do at the multiple district level. And that's up to the incoming council to decide where we go with that. If the incoming council chooses to not go down that path, I believe strongly that we should still be able to find some ways to be able to leverage what we're learning in Milwaukee in 27A1 out to the rest of the multiple district.
Yeah, because the one observation is to make sure that we have achievable goals. And if we make it too big, we may not get the results that we desire.
That is part of the other beauty of working with public allies. They know what the average ally can get done, what the super ally can get done, and the low end one. And that's part of that process, and then going back and forth between May 15th and June 30th is really fine tuning what we're asking for and how it fits into their model as well. Because there's other rules that we don't need to get into with everyone, but there's other rules about what they can do with fundraising and what else they can, what percentage of time can be spent in different areas. And that's all part of that back and forth and making sure that we're hitting their requirements as well as what the public ally themselves want, the apprentice wants, and what we want. So it's all three pieces working together.
Okay, and thanks for that clarification. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in regards to that statewide project, like you were bringing up some things like access to, you know, retrieving the plastics. Like if the council says, you know, maybe we can't do it at a state level, but maybe we can do it at a Milwaukee level and maybe greater Milwaukee, like looking at the suburbs and see how far you can expand it. So that is totally up to you to use. You know, you can mold that multiple district project any way that makes the most sense. And then we would work that into the position description and goals for the ally, so that we don't have to throw it completely out if we can't do it statewide, but maybe it's a urban plastic collection, and maybe we can expand it to the suburbs and get, there's ways to modify it.
Yeah. So I realize my questions are without all the goals set, maybe a little premature, but.
No, they're good. It's good. This is part of the reason we wanted to talk to as many of the leadership team members of the multiple as possible to get this kind of feedback, because we are literally at the point of starting to put the pieces in place. And that feedback helps us refine and define what we need to put into the role, the actual written document for the role of the public ally, the apprentice. I will get there eventually, Lee. You know, it takes me a while sometimes. So are we excited? Other questions? I mean, you all know me, and it's a new, very exciting opportunity here for us as a multiple, and just for our association, having been a member of an urban club for over 30 years and looking for some way to turn things around and seeing what this model is. I think it's got great potential and a great opportunity for us to be showcased. So Lee, I forgot, I didn't write it down. So, hey, Lee, did you want to share anything?
Well, I think the one thing, this is a great opportunity for Wisconsin Lions in terms of notoriety. We have been moving up in the ranks in terms of membership, and if this can help us to do that even further. I also understand that the urban areas across the constitutional area are typically where we have the most problems getting members. The rural areas tend to be less of an issue. So we definitely need to do or get away from the, if you've always done what you've always, or always done what you've always done, you always get what you always got, right? So we need to try something different. I think that's awesome. And hopefully, at least at the district level, that we get those objectives set and the goals established, and everybody gets behind this and moves forward. But there's great opportunity here for Wisconsin Lions. We've been seen historically as being leaders in Lions Clubs International, and this opportunity is part of the reason that this is moving forward, and another great opportunity for us to be successful and show the leadership that we can provide.
Thank you, Lee.
This is BJ. A couple questions. When the district is working on, they did their SWOT analysis and now they're working on their goals. The United Way has public information available that they themselves have done some community mapping and community needs assessments. So it'd be interesting to see the goals that the district is coming up with, how they align with some of those needs of what another organization saw for that same area, how they align. And then that was more of a statement, I guess. The next is, with this information, will there be a seminar to just kind of update at state convention about this?
BJ, that is actually one of the things I was going to wrap with is leave with this group is the question for how does the leadership want to move forward for the rest of this Lions year and then next Lions year with reporting and how and touching base. And that's really up to you all as a council, both the sitting council and next year's council to define. And we will work with you to then deliver whatever that deliverable is and however you need it delivered. So that is a fantastic question. And the community mapping from the United Way, I have not seen that. And I think that's also fascinating. No one's even in our conversations with Public Allies, they have not brought that up either. So that may very well be one of the touch points they're already using to launch, but I don't know if it is. So we'll add it to our notes to check into. So thank you for sharing that information as well.
Yeah, when we were looking at starting the new club in Sheboygan, we went to the city and they provided us their needs assessment that was public. So that might be if going to the community councils, and they may have that information readily available for you.
Oh, that's fantastic, BJ. Thank you. So we will await to hear from, by the way, BJ, I haven't gotten to talk to you. Congratulations, Council Chair-elect.
Thank you very much.
We'll work with both you and Tammy and the incoming council and the sitting council for you all to define and let us know what the needs are, both for the rest of this year in reporting, and then also for how the next year's council wants to move forward. And we'll go from there with that. I know you guys have nothing else to do, as council chairs. That was some sarcasm. Anyway.
Everybody's muted. You can't hear them laugh.
I left mine on. I'm laughing.
So is there anything else we can share with you now? Any other questions, any other concerns, or any other ideas?
I guess the only other just question I have is the collection of bags was a suggestion. You said there was some more detail or reasoning behind it for thinking of the plastic bag collection. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Or
I think it's BJ, I think it's premature, and because I don't want to, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to color the conversation too much or direct the conversation too much. What I'd love to see happen is the GSTs for us to be able to sit down with the GSTs in the next 2 months, basically by April, if next year's council approves us moving forward with this by March 1st, then by April 1st, sit down with the GSTs and start having that conversation so that we can hear from all the districts and what they see the needs and the opportunities for this might be before we go any further into that. We were suggesting plastic for a number of reasons, but some
Sure.
of those in a lot, well, anyways, yes. So I think
Sure.
it's a great question. I think I don't want to color it too much without letting everyone else come up with the ideas and it be what's right for everyone and not just being pushed from this level down or up or whatever direction we're going in.
Sure. Like Lion Patty said, we have our call on Sunday night. So the whole group will start discussing it, and they'll have access to you over their week at St. Charles, on all of their downtime they're going to have. And then we'll get with you guys to update you.
Cool. Thank you, BJ. Patty, I see your hand both physically and on the screen.
I'm just kind of curious, can you send a link for this recording so that we can send it to the rest of our firsts that are not on here before we get to St. Charles, so they can maybe just look at it before they go to St. Charles, so if they have any questions?
We can definitely do that. And also, I will also include the slide deck. And what I'm going to do is because I have all your emails in disparate locations, I'm going to make the assumption that our current council chair, since she created this meeting for us, could perhaps do the follow-up. If I get her the links and the information, she can then forward it on to everyone. So the recording link along with the PowerPoint, and I'll send it as a PowerPoint and also a PDF. Actually, I'll just send you the PDF because you don't want the PowerPoint necessarily, but that'll cover everything. So you've got all the materials then. And then if there's further questions, please, or additional ideas, by the way, please reach out, send me a note, send a note to Tammy, send a note to BJ or someone, whoever, but get that to me, or so that we can make sure it gets put into the rotation and we can answer the questions as they come up. And then I will get it out if we either reach out to Michael or Hailey if we need to, or wherever we need to go with it. Don, it looks like, hey, look, Don, you're wearing Badger Red. I love it.
Yeah. So just some thoughts off the top of my head. It sounds like a tremendous opportunity. My thought is, in terms of doing a needs assessment, I'm not sure that plastic bag collection and making benches or anything would be taking full advantage of it. So I hope maybe some other ideas can be generated that would generate more excitement. So and I'm not sure what those would be, but I hope we can kick that around and see, because I think with the opportunity, we don't want to kind of squander it on something that maybe isn't all that vital a need as seen by the residents of an urban club. So that's my 2 cents. And BJ, I'm glad here we're going to have downtime in St. Charles. That's good news.
I don't know what schedule you all got, but I didn't. Yup. Thank you, Don. That's really great feedback.
I saw 13-hour days. I got a different schedule than Don.
Oh no, 59-minute rule. You have that off.
13 hours. Where's your bar time?
And considering BJ didn't go to the Q Center, he doesn't know.
I couldn't see where I was. I could have been there. I don't know.
I saw and you were not. James, you have a question?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of input. I know they have like a great community needs assessment thing and things like this. I'm just thinking technology wise, we're moving into newer generations, and especially since we have LCI on here and Lee, since he's technology, things like SurveyMonkey are great for small surveys. You get 10 free questions. Is there any way LCI can start adopting some of these things so that these surveys can be done online and we could target them towards communities, like a community needs assessment? We could target that online to a specific district or club region and get inputs from the community. And then maybe they can collate that into the new Salesforce.
No, I'll definitely pass that feedback along, and that might be, I mean, we use surveys all the time, but maybe there's something that we could do as a tool that Lions can use as well when they go into the new Lion portal when that launches. But there's a lot of good points here, and even thinking about Jodi, maybe that's something that the Ally could also help run, is a survey on because I think they're going to come with some, oh, hey, the community, is kind of, this is the need of the community from my perspective, from as an outsider perspective here, and then having a conversation with the Lions. But maybe their first start would be, hey, you know what, you're going to be working with the district on growing clubs and getting the the brand awareness out there, but we're also going to be doing this great big service project. We'd like you to work with the multiple district to get feedback from the Lions, and then get feedback from the non-Lion community to see what the community needs, because that's another part of this, is building that brand awareness where you're bringing voices together. We're bringing the Lion voices together, but the Ally can help us bring the non-Lion voices together into like a forum. So, maybe if you go to the council and say, I'm just brainstorming here with you guys to say, we got this opportunity. We have the opportunity to run a statewide project. We have a few ideas, but we don't really know yet what that will be, because we want to get the feedback from the Lions and the non-Lion community. So let's approve a project, approve a budget, and we're going to be working with this community, this community leader that's going to be working with us. And that first step, when they hit the ground running in September, is going to get feedback from, we're going to run a survey. We're going to have a conversation on
I think that's great, Michael. And I think what we could do, especially adding what BJ was talking about, we may not need to do the community surveys. If United Way has already done the mapping in these markets that United Way is in, we can at least understand what the community needs are. And then once we see what those are, rank it across the whole multiple district, and then throw that information out to the Lions and see where the interest is with the clubs.
Right.
And
start the conversation.
Yeah, if we can tap into United Way before we get the Ally in September.
Sure.
Because this is all getting into a lot lower level, a lot more detailed view, but I think the opportunity is there. And I think the points that you're all making are really vital, that we have this opportunity. How do we get the information in? How do we get community input? How do we get Lion input? And how do we do it quickly and efficiently, so that we have time to promote and implement whatever this challenge is going to be. And I think so if the Ally comes in September, so I'm spitballing this too, the Ally comes in towards the end of September. If we've already got the contacts for United Way and they've got an overview of the whole state that we can get from them, then we can provide that to the council, and we can even have the survey done in advance of that. I mean, D1 Survey Monkey is not that expensive for, if you're going to, well, actually it is with doing the full, all of them, but we could figure out a way to use the smaller license we're using for D1 for our GMA member survey, that same size license, and possibly then use that in each district or 2 districts a month or whatever it is. We could figure something out, I'm sure, to be able to get the Lion input as well and still make it not be overly ridiculously costly. So great question.
Go ahead.
Jodi, so for survey wise, just for your knowledge, Jodi, the GMT, we brought on Zoho and has unlimited surveys, unlimited responses. So that's a service we have for a year now set up. And then another question, is it the understanding that the Ally, the apprentice that's being hired, will be from the actual Milwaukee area and not from a different state coming in, because they wouldn't necessarily know their community that well?
Correct. They are definitely from the city in which the Public Allies office is. So they will be from the Milwaukee area. They may be from a suburb, but most likely from Milwaukee proper.
Okay.
And by the way, they aren't always, as long as you're asking that question, they aren't always just post-college. Sometimes you see people that are in their late 20s or late 30s, mid 30s, that are in career change mode, and they're looking for something to expand their network and their skill set, and they're also in this mix.
Jodi and James, I think, both made very good points here. In the time frame that you're looking at right now, that you may need this information, Right now, the technology committee is doing their best to make sure that they do not overcommit. Salesforce is an excellent platform to create the base for some of these capabilities, but I don't believe some of the expanded things that you're talking about I would want to rely on in the timeframes that you're on at this particular point in time, but they are future. So again, just to set some expectations, the whole technology committee is that we need to deliver a quality product this time. We do not want another experience like My Lion, and that when we come out that it works. And the other thing that they admitted that was admitted ever since WMMR, they had the programmers doing all the testing, not the end users. Obviously I can write a piece of code that works wonderfully for me, but when I give it to Tammy or to Jodi, they might be doing a what the devil is this? So.
Thank you, Lee. That's really vital information. And who knows, this is going to be such a smooth rollout, Lee, that we're all just going to flip a switch and it's going to go perfect, right?
Remember what I said about trying not to overcommit? However, if it is that way, I'll take all the accolades.
Spoken like a true ID.
So this is not our one and only shot at talking about this. And I mentioned it earlier. This is going to be an ongoing, it's open communication all along the way. If you don't, just in case you don't have I'm going to drop my email into the chat window here. If you're looking for something from me, email is the easiest way to make sure it doesn't disappear. I'm going to give you my phone number as well. I'm hit or miss able to take calls with the way the world is these days. And if you text me, assume if I don't respond to you that you better email me, because once I look at a text, it goes away and it's forgotten because the next 50 things come in. So it's the best thing to do is hit me on my email, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. This is a program that, as Michael mentioned, with being the champion, is going to be my major commitment for Lions this next year, above and beyond my Lions virtual work. So I'm blocking out 20 hours a week and plans to be working with the Ally 20 hours a week, and the Ally program, I should say, for 20 hours a week this next year, and to make sure that we give this the best shot possible. If this works in Wilmington, Delaware, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the potential for us to take this to Green Bay, Wisconsin, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, La Crosse, Stevens Point. And then, I mean, from our standpoint is huge, but from an organizational standpoint, for us to be able to roll it out in other urban areas across the US is really got amazing potential for us. So it's very exciting where this could go. And I do want to just reemphasize one other thing. This is a test market. This is being funded through the GAT department at LCI at this point. If the test market goes well, it will then be rolled into a proposal to the board of directors, the LCI board of directors, for the LCI board of directors to consider doing a pilot, an official pilot program for this partnership with Public Allies. So we are one of only two, Wisconsin and Delaware are the only two test markets there are for this that will be going on this next year. And really, again, there's great potential here for us as a multiple. And then, as Lee said, it's really an honor for us to have this opportunity to even test this out. There's 20 markets to choose from, and Wilmington and Milwaukee, woohoo! So any other questions at this point? Comments or concerns, I should say, as well. If not, thank you all for taking time out on a Sunday evening. Kansas City at the end of the third is up 20-13 in case you haven't watched the TV recently. And I am here this week and then out all next week, but we'll be checking emails throughout the week and getting back to you as I can. If there's anything you need, please reach out. If you can't reach me, you can reach Tammy or BJ and at least get the ball rolling, if you will, and we can kind of go from there.
Thank you, Jodi and Michael.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great week. Stay safe, and hopefully your back doesn't hurt too much from shoveling today if you're in the southern part of the state.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, LCI, Michael, Haley, Jody, Lee. It was very
Thank you, everybody.
informative.
Welcome.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night. Thank you.
Right.
Oh,
Patty's
boy.
hanging out because we're going to have a conversation about branch clubs and maybe some other things too.
You're welcome to stay, Tammy.
Oh, here,
Okay,
I'm going to stop the recording.
yeah. And you, so you are host.